So we're just waiting for Steele on our side? Good to go. What? Oh, okay. Perfect. So Jimenez is the only. Just give us one more second, everybody. Thank you for your patience. The Select Committee will come to order. Welcome to our final business meeting of 2023, during which we will consider bipartisan policy recommendations related to America's economic and technological competition with the Chinese Communist Party. I am profoundly grateful to the ranking member for his bipartisan work to produce this report, as well as the contributions of all the members who contributed dozens and dozens of recommendations to advance American prosperity for decades to come. The report represents a culmination of our work over the past 7 months on economic and tech issues, including 5 hearings, 4 in D.C., roundtable discussions in California, Detroit, Iowa, and Wisconsin, most importantly, Wisconsin, an economic Thunderdome debate, a tabletop exercise simulating the economic aspect of a Taiwan contingency, along with a field hearing in New York City. The result is a comprehensive framework for how the United States should approach its economic competition with CCP. This is a product that I believe is greater than the sum of its parts, and taken collectively, these recommendations form a balanced approach that adopts a more assertive posture to protect the American economy and our national security when it comes to the CCP, and a more collaborative approach when it comes to economic cooperation with our key allies and partners, all the while safeguarding American technology and capital. It is the product of hundreds of hours of work from members and staff. It's the product of divided government and men and women of good faith coming together in a spirit of principled compromise, and I hope all the members of this committee will support it. And without objection, the chair may declare the committee in recess at any time, and I recognize the ranking member for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair Gallagher, for your leadership in producing this essential strategy to win America's economic competition with the Chinese Communist Party. You and your staff have truly worked in a bipartisan way to incorporate priorities on the Democratic side. I want to thank you so much for your and your staff's efforts. At a time when there's so much dysfunction and gridlock, I'm proud that we were able to rise to the seriousness of the challenge, and we are presenting a unified message to the CCP and, importantly, to our allies and partners around the world. Over the last few months, Republican and Democratic Select Committee staff worked early mornings, late nights, weekends, and even over the Thanksgiving holiday weekend to solidify and negotiate the policies recommended in this report. Their expertise and deep commitment helped make this work product possible, and their work is greatly appreciated, and I'd like to give them a round of applause, if possible. The strategy outlined in this report is to reset, prevent, build our economic, trade, and technological relationship with the PRC. Those 3 pillars draw upon 9 hearings, numerous roundtables and meetings, and select committee events all over the country, from Silicon Valley to Iowa to Detroit to Wisconsin to Wall Street. It's clear that we need to move forward from our outdated assumptions and also up our game, leaning into our strengths and undertaking a radical revitalization of America. We can only outcompete the CCP by being the best version of ourselves internally and externally. I'm particularly excited about the 3rd build pillar that demonstrates how we should up our game, including by attracting the best talent in the world, leading in innovation and manufacturing technologies here at home, strengthening our relationships with our allies and partners, and protecting ourselves against the CCP's unfair trade policies and human rights abuses. This report is the roadmap for a new, ambitious economic policy, and these recommendations deserve the full support of the Select Committee and indeed the entire Congress. I look forward to their adoption and work together as Democrats and Republicans to move these recommendations into legislation as soon as possible. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Krishnamurthy. I now call up the Select Committee report. The clerk shall designate the report.
Introducing the report, Reset, Prevent, Build, a strategy to win America's economic competition with the Chinese Communist Party.
Without objection, the report will be considered read and open for debate. Do any other members wish to speak on the report? Mr. Johnson is recognized.
We've heard so much testimony in so many hearings, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, about how the Chinese Communist Party looks toward markets. They love government intervention that distorts markets. And of course, that is not fair to global trading, but it also makes their people poorer. And there are times when some in American industry will come to us and they will ask for this type of government intervention in our markets, ostensibly because for national security purposes. But in reality, we know that they're interested in industrial policy, they're interested in protectionism. And I think this committee could have made an error if we had gone too far down that path. Mr. Chairman, you talked about this as a balanced and assertive work product. And I would agree that there were some important trade-offs that were made by both you and the ranking member to make sure that we got to a place where we would have overwhelming support for this work product. I do think the challenge for this committee, for this Congress, for this government as we move forward will be to make sure that the provisions in this report are implemented, are executed, and are maintained for national security purposes rather than for protectionism or industrial policy. The implementation will really matter, and how we write some of these bills will really matter. My friend Mr. Auchincloss, who I think has been a strong and clarion voice over the last year on these topics, has talked about the importance of making sure that we don't create even more mechanisms that encourage rent-seeking, that say that decisions about our economy should be made by lobbyists and by attorneys rather than by technicians, by inventors, by scientists. I think we have a work product that can be executed well, that can rebalance, that can reset our economic relationship with the Chinese Communist Party. I will be a proud yes on this, but again, I would close by just asking all members of the committee to be focused on implementation that furthers fair markets rather than holds them back.
Thank you.
With that, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Do any other members wish to speak on the report? Mr. Auchincloss. Oh, Mr. Whitman. No?
Sorry, I thought Mr. Whitman was asking for to be recognized. I appreciate the comments from my friend from South Dakota. I'll associate myself with those comments. I cannot get to a yes on this report despite the really thoughtful engagement of members and staff on both sides. I continue to think threads of industrial policy and protectionism run too strongly throughout it, and I'm happy to expound upon that in my written remarks. But I will say that there is much good in here, and I look forward to working with committee leadership and committee members to distill some of those 80-20 policies for a bill that we can action this Congress.
Well, the gentleman has my commitment to working towards that very outcome, an 80-20 bill that does get to that objective, and I've made my intentions known to the Speaker and House leadership. I also want to thank the gentleman for his thoughtful engagement with this product. He did not dismiss it out of hand. He genuinely tried to make it better and indeed succeeded in that regard. His language on GSP was essential. A lot of the recommendations, and I think you see this tension throughout the report. As we try and defend ourselves from CCP economic aggression, we need to enhance our economic and technological partnerships with the rest of the world, and I think the gentleman and I are aligned on that, as well as various bills of his, like the SOAR Act, are reflected in the final product. So he has my commitment. I welcome a thoughtful dissent on the particular issues where he has concerns, and he has my commitment going forward that we will strive for that 80-20 outcome. Thank you. Mr. Whitman is recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank you and the ranking member's leadership on this. Thank the other committee members. I think this is a very thoughtful and reasonable set of objectives that this committee should expect to be achieved by the committees of jurisdiction. I think our effort now is to heavily encourage the committees of jurisdiction in the legislative effort that we will undertake to make sure that these bills get heard before the committee, come to the House floor. The tremendous amount of work and effort that goes into this has to come to fruition through the legislative process. I know there's lots of thoughts and ideas about who should do what. This This committee, though, has done an incredible job of putting this together. So we have done a lot of the foundation work for the committees of jurisdiction. I would heavily encourage those committees of jurisdiction to use this, to use the work that this committee has done, to use the goodwill that's across the spectrum here, and make sure that that is the emphasis on getting legislation through the committee to the House floor and passed. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Whitman. Do any other members wish to be recognized? Mr. Lukemeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations also to you and the ranking member. Well done. And I want to just reiterate what Mr. Whitman just said. I think we've got a great work product here, and as well as what Mr. Johnson said, that we can be proud of. A lot of stuff in here can go to the floor of the House with the committee's jurisdiction carrying those bills and get the job done. But I think as we've been here for a year now with this committee and have seen what's transpired with China over this past year, initially, we thought they were getting ready to have a booming time as COVID was over. They were changing their economy around, and they went the other direction. And I think we've got an opportunity here to push them in a way that can keep them back on their heels. This committee has done fantastic work to expose what's going on in China, expose their weaknesses from the standpoint of their economy and their weaknesses in their military aspects, as technological aspects. We've also pointed out their strengths so that we know what we're up against. And I think this next year we will have a lot of opportunity to continue to push back. But I think our job has just begun. This is a good start, but we have China on their heels. They are limping along right now. We must continue to put the pressure on and don't let up. And with that, I'll yield back.
Thank you. Do any other members wish to speak on the report? Ms. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I plan to support the bipartisan nature of this report and its publication. I am particularly proud of the section in which we call for funding the National Science Foundation, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and the Department of Energy's Office of Science. As the now ranking member of the Subcommittee for Research and Technology on the House Science Committee, and previously as chair of that subcommittee, we passed through the science part of the CHIPS and Science bill last term in Congress, and it became an unfunded mandate. And if we are going to win the future and be able to compete effectively and not fall behind to the place that we got into, which led us to having to do what I believe was a catch-up bill with CHIPS primarily, this is a very key step, and it should be heeded throughout the Congress. I also really appreciate what is in this report on the American automotive industry, in particular with the autonomous vehicle technologies that we need to maintain dominance and control of here in the United States through U.S. automakers. And if it's by way of testing, which we certainly know that there are imbalances, and if it's with regard to proliferation of autonomous vehicle technologies. Our auto industry has a goal of reaching zero auto accident fatalities. We certainly have a long way to go with purely driverless cars. But I do see this technology and have long seen this technology as key to minimizing auto accident fatalities. And what we don't want to have happen is to find ourselves in the same place that we have fallen into with battery electric vehicles, and also with regard to hydrogen. The United States is well positioned with hydrogen energy, particularly coming out of the infrastructure bill that was passed, the Bipartisan Infrastructure and Jobs Act of 2021. We have many startups, we have large companies, we have the semi-truck industry adopting hydrogen at a fast rate. I see this all over my district in southeastern Michigan and Oakland County, Michigan. But autonomous vehicle technology, LiDAR technology, is mission critical for us. And I really applaud this report for honing in on AV technology, and I'm pleased to support it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Dr. Dunn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to add my congratulations. I will be a resounding yes on this. I would like to call attention to recommendation 3, subparagraph 6 on page 43. This is the GSP renewal. The paragraph starts by calling for reauthorization. Yes, we absolutely should have done that 3 years ago. But then it says in order to accelerate it, we should modernize it. I think the fastest way to accelerate it is simply reauthorize it. We've been fiddling around with that. And I will say that we did a resolution out of this committee that was signed by every member of the committee except for a couple people in Ways and Means. But both the chair and the ranking member signed that resolution calling for a clean reauthorization of GSP, and I rather hope we will turn our attention back to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And as we were talking about, it's not in this report, but we have work to do when it comes to the compact states, which is absolutely critical. Any other members? LaHood?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to congratulate the committee and you and the ranking member and the staff for putting together a very comprehensive report here today. And I would associate myself with the comments of Representative Johnson and Mr. Auchincloss as it relates to markets and creating customers around the world. I did have concerns initially with the provisions related to PNTR, but I appreciate the committee's work at the staff level and at the member level to work through that because I do have concerns about going down a protectionist path as it relates to certain sectors of our economy, particularly as it relates to agriculture. So I want to thank the committee for that. But I think what we've set forth here as a template for the committees of jurisdiction as we move into next year to work in a comprehensive way to fulfill what we set out to do on this select committee. And as we think about how do we win the strategic competition against the CCP, I think we do it on the economic front. And so we've put together a plan, and I look forward to working in a bipartisan way to implement that. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, I think what the CCP fears the most is bipartisan support against them. And we've put forth a plan and a roadmap here that I think can be successful, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Do any other members wish to speak? Mr. Torres.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report, I agree with most of the items on the report, but the report proposes to move the PRC to a new tariff column, and I just want to state for the record that I favor de-risking rather than decoupling. The inescapable economic reality is that the United States remains dangerously dependent on the CCP for critical minerals, rare earth elements, active pharmaceutical ingredients, increasingly clean energy technology. And it would seem to me decoupling from China's economy without eradicating those dependencies could do us more harm than good. It could leave us wide open to economic retaliation and coercion for which we're catastrophically unprepared. And so we as a country have not yet built the resilience in our domestic supply chains that we need to pursue the trade policy that we need. So my only cautionary note is that we should be tough on the CCP, but wisely so, and I'll leave it at that.
I thank the gentleman. Do any other members wish to speak? We will now proceed to a vote on the adoption of the report. There being no further debate on the Select Committee's report, the question now arises on adopting and favorably reporting the report to the House. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The report is adopted and will be favorably reported to the House. Okay. As provided by Committee Rule 5C, if any member wishes to file additional views, they may do so by submitting their additional views to the General Counsel and the hearing clerk no later than 5 p.m. on Friday, December 15th. Please reach out to the committee staff with any questions regarding submission. Without objection, staff is authorized to make technical and conforming changes to the report considered by the committee today. So ordered. With that, the Select Committee stands adjourned.